Okay. We'll call the meeting of Design Review Board to order. John, give us roll call on the coma confirmation.
We have 4 members in attendance today. One member is unable to come today, Mikesh Patel, and we have 2 openings on the board. So we do have our 4-member, which is a quorum for today.
Thank you.
And staff has supplied the required meeting notice to this Kansas Open Meeting Act. That's been taken care of and is in effect.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have the minutes of the last meeting, August 13th meeting. If everyone has take a look, if they haven't, and then once you've reviewed those, I'll take a motion if there's any changes or amendments.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes.
Okay. Haley moves we approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Katie seconds. Okay, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed? All right, meeting's carried forward. We'll move on to new business. John?
This is a review of application CC 20-9, followed by Ashby House Limited. It's requesting the approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the exterior renovation of the Ashby House apartment building located on South 8th Street. As far as background goes, deed records indicate that Fred Quincy sold this lot to Henry David Lee in approximately 1907. Mr. Lee then constructed this 3-story brick apartment house at this location in 1911. This shows a 1911 Sanborn that shows the vicinity around the house, where it's primarily residential on the west side of 8th Street, as well over on the portion of 7th Street that you see there. There was a church built to the south of Walnut on that case, and this shows roughly 80 by 40 foot structure on the location. The Ashby House is an emergency shelter for families, including men, women, and children. Residents must abide by the rules and attend programs intended to enable them to develop self-sufficiently within the community. This shows the building in more detail. The main structure is 40 feet across by 80. There are some accesses to the basement in the rear, and then also 2 pedestals in the front of the building. This shows the apartment house in 2015, when some work was done to stabilize the upper story of the front facades. Our next slide shows that there's some separation up here. This was prior to the restorative work in 2015, which was basically a repair of existing conditions. It was limited to the 3rd story of those porches. This shows some of the columns are rocking away from the structure, and I think we have one more on that. This shows the columns in more detail. This was a temporary brace that was put up on the 3rd floor to carry those framing matters. And what was replaced during this repair was primarily the framing and column supports for the porch itself, and that was to prevent any more movement. But there wasn't a lot of restorative work done on this. We can go to the next slide. And this shows the building in early 2019. And this is the area where the columns were taking out. These were 6x6 piers placed in there to provide some railing. When that area was renovated, they did place in some solid railing where there was panel railing before. This shows the apartment house now. Because that deterioration was this emergency in nature, a structural engineer recommended Jeff Chris to take down the brick piers as well as the porches, and that was an emergency measure, and since that opened some doorways to the outside, there were some infill placed in here, as well as windows in the areas behind where the porches were. The 2 brick bases were retained in these locations. This shows the restorative work proposed by the applicant and his architect. They're going to place 2 single-story porches back on the retained brick piers in this location. The porches themselves will have a column supports, a railing, and then a gable roof. There is a texture to the gable roof, we're assuming, which is a standing seam roof in the green. This is an existing feature up here where there is already a standing seam roof. And then there is some paneling placed around the windows. This is a somewhat different window configuration than what is existing on the structure now, but the applicant's architect may address that. Given that the responsibility of the design review board is to approve the construction of the 2 porch enclosures having wood support posts and railings and a gable roof with an enclosed office, that is your review today. The remainder of that was stabilized on an emergency measure, and whatever work is done in that area now is voluntary, but you can comment maybe on some finishes. We did notice some paneling around the windows that could be explored as far as detail goes, as well as the coloration of the standing seam roof on the 2 porches. As a possible condition of approval, you could verify a certain color as a possible condition. And as far as suggested findings on the proposed application, is that the new porch materials are similar to those used traditionally on residential structures in the business improvement district. The proposed new materials are detailed to provide human scale, and the retention or reuse of the brick bases will be compatible with the historic character of the property. The color scheme proposed for the standing seam roof is coordinated with the color scheme of the building as far as findings go. You do have the following alternatives to approve a certificate of compatibility, approve the certificate of compatibility for the exterior renovation subject to conditions, to propose consideration of the application. And in the case of denial, there is an appeal process. Staff has made the following 2 recommendations: that the surface color for the standing seam metal roof porches will be a earth tone or another color more compatible with the finished color of the brick facade of the building. And then if there's any significant changes to the proposed renovations, that staff will be notified and to determine whether additional review would be required. On condition 1, that is in discussion with the applicant's architect today, and he may give rationale on why they pursued the finished colors that they have, but you could certainly put that into some sort of decision that you would make as far as staff's recommendation. So at this point, staff would be glad to answer any questions on the project itself. What you're looking at is an improvement over what is there now, and certainly the porches that were on the front of the building were in emergency condition and had to be taken down, so that review does not actually require an approval by the design review board in the ordinance. Emergency demolition is approved without your review. So at this point, the staff would be glad to take any questions the board may have.
Yeah, let's see. So on the roof color recommendation that is mentioned is on the porch.
It would be on the gable roof of
The gables or porch and gables.
This coloration on here, we're assuming that because there's a similar standing seam or a rib roofing up here. That's something that's an existing condition. This would be new, and I think it's an item for discussion with the applicant and his architect on their selection of colors. They may have other rationale, so we could certainly ask them if they have a preference.
I'm sorry, say that last thing. They didn't have,
They have a preference.
they have a preference? Okay, sorry, I wasn't hearing all that.
Sure, excuse me.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification on the windows? I think I missed that part. So this drawing is different than what exists? So what exists is what they look like, or this is what they will look like? I'm just,
When the repairs were made there was probably some issues on how much they could place in those openings, and
that is what they will look like. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I
So-
I thought that's what I was understanding, but then I wasn't sure.
No,
Yes.
That's what I was, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Would someone, a representative from the project like to speak? Or if you'd identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Warren Ediger. I'm the architect for the project. I'll start by just briefly describing some of the emergency conditions that we found and why that proceeded in a very short timetable. Ashby House had hired a contractor to come in and do some minor repair, touch-up paint work on it. While they were next to and within the porches, one of the workers leaned against the masonry column and it moved. And so, on the second floor, so they started looking at it very carefully and found bricks loose, that the bearing condition for the what would be the third floor porch on top of that column was not in suitable condition, and that condition carried all the way down. We had a structural engineer come over right away and take a look at it. His recommendation was to remove everything from this level up. We had the occupants of the apartments in the front areas moved out so that in case something collapsed either prior to or during demolition, that they wouldn't be at risk. And then the contractor took everything down. If you can show the slide of what it looks like currently. These infill pieces went up quickly because there was originally a full opening there that went out onto the porch that had to be protected so somebody wouldn't inadvertently step out and not have a landing anymore. So these are painted and weatherproof, but they're not the final appearance. It'll look more like what the rendering does, with the exception that they're going to have 2 windows instead of 3, and that's largely for an energy conservation measure to reduce the amount of glass there. So as far as the pattern and the color and texture of this, it'll look closer to what the rendering does. They'll add some trim pieces in there. Also, there are some exposed pieces on the, or areas on the brick that need to be enclosed, and we'll add these trim members here that look similar to what some of the other portions of the building do. The lower section down here, the porches, that's actually, these are openings into a basement area where the lower portion of the building comes out underneath those. They're sound. There was no good reason to take them out and would have created a good deal more additional work, so we were able to save that. The land, or the porch is watertight, and then we'll put a roof on there so that they still are at least able to use the porches at that level.
And John, just for clarification, we're only addressing the porches, right?
Yes, as far as today's decision, it would be addressing the porches. We didn't feel we could go back and look at the work do the emergency on the building. But with that condition, we did want to note there were some discrepancies on the face of the building that it wasn't taken account in the proposed rendering, and that might just be the panels around the windows and the fact that there's 2 instead of 3. But with that information, you wouldn't be approving that. We were focusing today on the 2 replacement porches.
Okay.
Okay.
John had asked or brought up the question about the color of the roof in there, and that was simply done for the purposes of the drawing. There has been no selection or materials purchased for that. The roof up here actually is, I think, scheduled for replacement. It's an older roof, and it certainly is at an age and condition where that's probably needing to be done at the same time we do the lower roof, so we want to make all three of those areas match. And if you have guidance in a direction you want to go with the color selection, we'll certainly work with that.
And then the like I said, the coloring, the light yellow beige there, that's just a preliminary color?
That was to get the
Just get it up, color up on,
yeah,
right.
waterproof.
Okay. Well, my thoughts in general is just if it's something that the rooftops, the porch tops, something that coordinates well with whatever color you choose.
Right.
I don't have a preference as to what color, but
So I would note too that the brick is painted, so it's not actually the natural tone of the brick you're seeing
Right.
on there.
comments, questions, everyone?
No, I don't think so.
Any comments, questions?
Okay.
All
Thank you.
right then, thank you. Would you like to speak? Yeah, you step up to the podium then and identify yourself. Yes.
I'm Larry Penkratz. I'm the chair of the Ashby House. And first of all, I'd like to really thank all the city staff for helping us with this. We've had some adventures lately. A building that was built in 1907 has some challenges, so we're getting it. To give you a quick overview, this is actually our substance abuse facility. We have a partnership with Central Kansas Foundation, and when we have ladies that come in with either singly or with a family, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
I never know
It's
if this
kind of,
mask
yeah,
can-
but I gotcha.
But, so they actually, what we do is they do all the counseling and then we provide the housing. And across the street is actually our homeless shelter, the one that's right beside the Episcopal Church. And then if you look at right beside it, Blue Beacon had moved that house in there last year. And if you can see, been by there lately, the corner is starting to look a lot better. We're hoping by about October, the whole area will be there. That will be our new shelter. And we'll be able to actually hold more people, be able to divide them up, a lot better security for the staff to be. But we house homeless families and ladies. So Andy Holtberg is our director and has done a great job of kind of getting us back. We had a little mission drift there for a while. 7 years ago, I wanted to take those porches off, but at that time I was told by the director that it was, and I just learned this from John, that he told me that because of the looks, you couldn't do it. And I found out we actually got approved 7 years ago. So, and then we also got a really bad contractor, and that's why those porches just continue to deteriorate. So, just want to kind of give you a quick overview of what we're doing, where we're going. We really want to be good neighbors to everybody and get that corner really cleaned up and looking good. So, if Andy, do you have anything you want to say? Or?
No, I think that was great.
But I always like to clarify what we're doing at Ashby House. I think it's a real asset to the community. So.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, again, any other comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we go with option number 2, approve the certificate of compatibility for exterior renovation, subject to any conditions. Also with the caveat that if the surface color of the standing seam metal roof of the porches can be earth tone, I would agree with that. That bright green is a little bold for that area.
So, all right, got a motion, a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Jennifer? All right, thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to administrative items, election of officers.
Yes, each September is the month that we generally will elect officers for the remainder of the year. There was some shuffling in 2019, when Mr. Heater left and moved to California on that. At that time, in February of this year, Gary Martins was elected chair, and Ms. Waters, Collar Waters, was elected vice chair. And later in July 9th, Martins was still chair, and Mr. Mattel took over from Carlo Walters as vice chair. So the chair and vice chair can each hold a position for 2 years. So it is possible for Mr. Martins and Mr. Patel to be elected again because they haven't fulfilled that 2 years. Or certainly, we would note that with Ms. Noonan and Ms. Kitchen, they have to be on the board 12 months before they can be an officer, so your selection is also somewhat limited. So in that case, Ms. Helzer and Mr. Martin and Mr. Patel are eligible for the positions of chair or vice chair as you determine.
And Carla's not,
Carla went over to our planning commission.
okay,
So
she's not on the board anymore?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
committee?
Yeah. We did lose her, and then also Ms. Gillum.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, then, any
I'd
discussion?
like to nominate Gary to stay as chair.
All right,
Second.
all right. Any other nominations? Okay, no other nominations. In that case, I guess we'll take a vote. Gary is chair.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Yes.
All right then, so now we need vice chair.
I nominate Mukesh Patel.
Okay, Mukesh, just follow through. All right, and do we need a second for that, I guess?
Second.
Second. All right, any other nominations? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carried, or election carried, whatever. All right, then we don't appear to have any preliminary discussion items. No unfinished business, is that right, John?
Yes, we have no other unfinished business to bring before you today or discuss, so that is an item that doesn't have to be addressed. We would open up the public forum as the next
Yeah, and I
item.
don't see anybody here for the public forum, so I guess that covers that. So with no further business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Seconded?
Second.
Second. Katie seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.